Hi, it's Tom from Lone Horizons, and welcome back to How to Play Scarlet Heroes Part 2. So, last time we went over the basics of what Scarlet Heroes is as an RPG and how, it's designed for solo players, but also designed for one-on-one play with one player and a GM. And that's the best way to use it, really. I think we talked last time about how adding more than a couple of player characters makes it a bit too easy and it doesn't quite work how it's intended. Anyway, we'll get straight into what we're going to cover. This video, I'm going to first kind of do a really brief introduction to the campaign setting and the world of the Red Tide that it's set in. I'm going to go over the game rules, like what rolls you'll be making, how checks work and skills and all that kind of stuff, which shouldn't take too long really, because it's quite simple. And character classes as well. There's only 4 classes, so we can go over them, and I'll also introduce a player character of each class that I've made as a demonstration. Then finally, we will run a really short combat scene from the game, and we're going to actually run it 4 times. Hopefully it won't drag on too long, but I'm going to run it with each character that we've made, one from each class, so you can see how the different classes play in combat. So firstly, the world of the Red Tide. It's a campaign setting that Uncle Kev Crawford created, I think, for the RPG Labyrinth Lord before he made Scarlet Heroes, the RPG. And the main thing you need to know about it is it's like what you're going to experience is a bit like the world from Ironsworn, the Ironlands in Ironsworn, because it's a set of islands where a whole group, multiple groups of refugees from different countries have ended up fleeing a disaster. So in that way, it's quite similar to Ironsworn, where you get all different types of people from all around the world all mixing together and kind of clashing, which makes for kind of interesting stories. So what happened to the rest of the world? Because here is the game world as we have it. As is available to us. The rest of the world is covered in the Red Tide, which is a horrible foggy red mist that rolled in off the sea one day 300 years ago. We can see here, 300 years ago the world was consumed by a crimson mist. The Red Tide crept remorselessly from the eastern seas, slowly swallowing up the land in a fog that was filled with demons and worse creatures still. All the world was devoured at last, save for a flotilla led by the great diviner Lamech of the ninefold celestial empire. So this archmage Lamech, he, had some kind of prophetic dream before this happened and went around the world warning people about it, and almost everyone ignored him and thought he was a mad fool, I guess. And then it actually happened. And it's a bit like that Stephen King story. It's either called The Fog or The Mist. I can't remember which, where a New England town gets swallowed up by this fog and it's got horrible tentacled horrors coming out of it, snatching people. It's a bit like that. In this, you have the tide spawn, and there are some pretty horrible images of them in the book. So look away now if you don't like really disgusting imagery. But they're all different types, and they're all things that come out of the Red Tide and transform people into horrible monsters. So hopefully I won't get banned from YouTube for showing these illustrations, because like this one, Tidespawn Creeper, these short, hideously misshapen creatures are the remains of children, halflings and smaller humans who have fallen prey to the mists. So yeah, you can see what they look like. And then Wormwalker. The Wormwalker was once a man-sized creature, but its true size is sometimes difficult to discern under the halo of writhing, pallid worms that slide constantly through the creature's body. 3 hit dice and no treasure. So that's the world. Everyone is huddling together here, and I think there's something called Godbone or God's bone, and it's like a mineral or an element or something which is under the ground in these isles, and it stops the red tide from encroaching on the Sunset Isles too much. Although apparently tendrils of the mist creep in at night and go through people's windows in coastal towns and kind of whisper horrible things into their ears. I think it is a kind of plot created by the 9 Hell Kings. I don't know if they're... What am I thinking of? The 9 Kings of Hell. Maybe that's from something else. But the Hell Kings are the big bad guys of the world, the game world. Demon Hell King. Look at this. Their treasure hoard is listed as endless. 20 hit dice. Yeah, so the Everlasting Lords of Damnation. So I think that's who's responsible for it. Anyway, you can play a campaign that doesn't even involve the red tide if you want, because it's not everywhere and people are safe from it mostly in the Sunset Isles. So that's, it's an option, and there are cults of people who worship it and things like that. So speaking of people, we've got this Peoples of the Isles here. And what you have is the humans and the non-human or demi-human races, quite a few of the standard ones. And then you've also got different races of human from different nations. And probably the easiest way to describe them is by looking up the random name generator tables for these humans, which are somewhere around the back. Let's find them. Yeah, here we go. So if we look at the human races, we have got the Irongarder names. Here are some examples. Adalric Brandt, Adalric Altman, Egon Himmelreich, Heilger Osterhagen, Hrolf Ritter. So they're kind of a sort of German kind of culture, and you'll notice each of them seem to be based on real cultures from our world. So that's the Irongarder. Think of that as like kind of not really Eastern Europe, but Central Europe. You've got the Eshkanti. Listen to these names. Jabir Jaludi, Rahim Nakit, Salim Rakashi. So hopefully it's not too stereotypical. Hopefully it's not offensive to anyone, but basically he's picked a load of Middle Eastern names to represent this people. The Irongarder are kind of like mercenaries, and they have a military tradition in their culture, and they're all about kind of marching about and joining armies and working as mercenaries or working for their nation's king or whatever. The Escanti are somewhat stereotypically kind of merchant travelers who go on long trade journeys through their original homeland to other homelands to do trade deals with people. You then have the Gadal, and here are some of their names. Morag Lindok, Gavin Imri, Aidan Dalmahoy, Callum Bannatyne. So these are basically Celtic kind of people. That's all you need to know, I think. I could go through all of their history and stuff like that, but basically this gives you an understanding of who they are. Then there's the Imperials, and here we go. Minghua Pan, Dai Go, Chiang Song, Shan Wan. I'm butchering all these names. If these are real Chinese names, I apologize. They might not be. I don't know. He might have just made them up off the top of his head in a kind of semi-offensive way. I don't know. But this is Imperial China. The Empire is basically a carbon copy of Imperial China. And then here we go. Kiyoshi Kasumi, Minoru... that was... Kasumi was a female first name. So Minoru Matsumoto, Ren Sato, Daisuke Ito, Jiro Kitano. The Quay. It's basically Shogun Japan. Again, that's all you need to know. The Skanda, as you can probably guess, Scandinavian, Lothric, Lindau, Harik, Thules, Rangbjorn, Skarsgård. So yeah, they are kind of Viking type people. And you can go through, there are like different, there are different countries in here. So there's, I think Xi'an there is the capital of the empire, what's left of the empire. You've got Kitaminato, which is the capital of the shogunate, and like they do have backstories to them. So like the shogun has given up basically traded his people's souls for their freedom and safety, done deals with the Hell Kings to sacrifice people and stuff like that. So if you know, there's dark deeds going on behind the scenes in that land. And then there's the Majocracy of Tianlung, where it's ruled by evil wizards who practice blood magic, which requires fresh blood from whole like legions of slaves that they use for that. So they're not just all divided up by their original race. And then we discussed elves last time when we created our thief character. You've got dwarves. They're pretty similar to the dwarves you are familiar with. Same with halflings as well. They live in villages. And then you've got the Shu, who are basically the Shu are the dreaded native peoples of the Sunset Isles. The Shu are divided into 4 major types named by the early Irongarder explorers. Orcs are tall, muscular, and tireless, the most common breed in the mountains in the rough hills. Goblins are short, rarely exceeding 5 feet. Then you've got bugbears and hobgoblins. So they're the humanoid monster races of traditional fantasy RPG settings. And so you can be, I think it's called shoe-blooded. And if you're shoe-blooded, it's like being a half-orc in Dungeons and Dragons, you know. But you could just have kind of, you know, far back in your family line, orc blood somewhere or hobgoblin blood. So yeah, that's a very basic overview of the setting, and the rulebook does give you quite a lot of detail about all of them, which is really nice if you want to spend the time to read it. And then there's like the untamed lands, like the Shu lands, where everything to the west is like Shu country. And if you wanted to do some kind of West Marches style campaign, you could do it on the edge of the Shu lands. But yeah, that is basically it. All I wanted to say about the campaign setting. So on to the game rules themselves. Playing the game. I really like this section of the rulebook because compared to Dungeon Crawl Classics, which I've been playing recently as well, solo, everything is just laid out for you right here. And it even gives you somewhere a 1-page summary of them as well, which is really good to print out if you have the PDF. You can just print that out on its own and have it with you while you're playing. But anyway, here you go. You've got the 4 main mechanics here, and it's similar to old school D&D and OSR games, but it is actually different in some ways, which are worth noticing. So you've got checks. Checks are what they sound like. Checks are rolled when a character is trying some feat of skill or personal prowess that might reasonably tax a hero. So you have difficulty classes, like in other games. And unlike in other old school games, to roll a check, the hero rolls 2d8, adds their highest relevant trait, and adds their relevant attribute modifier. If the total is equal or higher than the check's difficulty, it's a success. Natural roll of 2 is always a failure, and 16 is always a success. So I'm going to just make a note of this for us so we can see it on screen, because we've got, like, we're doing a YouTube video. We need to have some kind of visual aid to help you remember this stuff. So checks. It's 2d8, and what is it? You add 2d8 plus trait, and that is your highest relevant trait. Let me get the character sheet we made. So here are the traits for Shepherd Brokenstone here. And while we're on the subject, actually, someone commented on part 1, Solo RPG Digitalist says, don't forget from page 10, elves get 1 bonus trait point in their elven senses, reflecting their keen perceptions and their ability to see clearly even in very dim lighting. They also receive a bonus trait point in whatever profession their prior incarnation maintained, like when they were reincarnated before, as they retain some fragmentary memories of their former lives. So, and he goes on to say, which means you should have elven senses 1 and a prior background 1 added as traits. So yeah, I totally forgot about that. I've run out of space in the little box here, so I'm going to put elven senses 1, and then his prior background. Look, here's a whole table full of actors, basically people, NPCs that you could include in an adventure. So why don't we see what he was? So we roll a d8 and a d10. This can be what he was in his previous life. Kind of taking a detour here, but that's all part of the fun when you're learning a new game. Even though I've been playing this game for 2 years, I still haven't learned everything. So a d8 and a d10, that is a 1 and a 3. So 1 on the d8 and 3. We've got 3 things. The commoner, underworld, or elite and noble. If he was a commoner, he could have been a beautiful young mistress. That's funny. Or underworld, a bitter pretender to rank. Elite and noble, a cynical watch leader. That's interesting. That could be useful as well. Okay, so we'll put... let's just put previous... It's going to be a long name for a trait. Previous incarnation. Watch leader. The leader of a city watch or something. 1. Okay. So back to checks. So it's you roll 2d8 plus your highest appropriate trait point, plus, what was it? Your attribute modifier. Okay, so as an example, let's say, what can we be doing? He's got that repair trait. Let's say he has encountered a merchant on the road whose cart has broken down, the wheel has come off it, and his background as a peasant rebel gave him 1 point of the trait repair. He wants to help out the merchant and fix the cart. So we will say check difficulties. 11 is an average check. Maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it should just be simple. A tricky feat for an unskilled hero, but no serious challenge for an experienced veteran. If a task is easier than this, it's probably not worth rolling. So yeah, fixing a wheel back onto a cart. So let's say it could. I think the modifier could probably be intelligence for this, and he doesn't have an intelligence modifier. So it will just be 2d8 plus 1 for his repair trait. And he needs a 9. So he has rolled well over that and he's passed it. And he helps the merchant, who probably rewards him with some trade goods or something. Who cares? And so this is a bit different to other games where you would roll a d20. And I think this is just my opinion, but I think the reason it's 2 dice is because you get a bell curve of results. So it basically looks like that on a graph. So the probability that you will roll low is low, like here, and the probability that you'll roll high is here, the probability that you'll roll somewhere in the middle of the two dice, like 4 and 4, I guess, is up here quite high. And remember, the point of Scarlet Heroes is to make it easier to play as one character who can be a kind of jack of all trades kind of guy. And I think that's why it's 2d8. But anyway, I got kind of sidetracked again with that. So that's checks. It's pretty straightforward, right? There's nothing too weird. You just have to remember that it's 2d8 plus your trait plus your modifier. You then have saving throws. Again, familiar if you've played old school RPGs, right? Saving throws are rolled to resist foul, sorcery, evade random misfortune, and withstand other hazards. Saving throws are rolled exactly the same way checks are, except that the hero also adds their character level to their roll. The difficulty to beat is always 9 plus the hit dice or level of the creature forcing the saving throw, or the level of natural hazard or trap they're trying to overcome. So if you were jumping across a pit or something like that, well, I guess that could be a check. If you were falling into a pit and trying to grab something to hang on, and you had to make a dexterity saving throw for it, you could use these same check difficulties for that as well. So this will be 2d8 plus, what was it? They also add the character level to their roll. Okay, so it's plus trait plus modifier, I'll just put mod, plus level. So that's a lot of bonuses that you can get. But remember, you might not have a modifier and you might not have an appropriate trait as well. You could have a trait for this situation called like athletic or something like that and add that on. Anyway, yeah, so that's saving throws. It's not that difficult. There is an example here. Let's see. For example, a 3-hit die giant cobra bites a hero, injecting a lethal poison. The hero is 2nd level with a constitution modifier of +1 and no relevant traits. He rolls 2d8 and adds his modifier in his level. He needs to equal or beat a total of 12, which is 9, which is the simple check difficulty standard, plus the cobra's hit dice. Oh, and it doesn't give an example of what happens. But okay, yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. And then you have attack rolls. And this is different again. This is similar but different to what you're used to, right? So attack rolls is what you do in combat, I'm sure you know. So here you roll 1d20 and you add your attack bonus. Just do that. ATK. Relevant attribute modifier. So put mod. And the target's armor class plus target AC. And the target, sorry, that's not, I shouldn't say target. What do they say here? Okay, you are aiming for to hit, okay? I'll say that because I said target as in the enemy. So to hit is 20, okay? So yeah, let's see. If Shekad Brokenstone was fighting someone, let's say he's using his longsword and he is attacking, say, a goblin with like 9 armor class, which is, I think, is unarmored. So he's rolled 18. So he adds his attack bonus, which is +1. He adds his modifier, which is his strength modifier he doesn't have. And then he adds the target armor class, which is 9. So that means he gets 28, right? Yeah, and hits. So yeah, you just got to remember you're adding these things together, and your target number that you want to hit is 20. You're not rolling to hit to like roll their armor class or over, unlike a lot of other games. And then damage rolls, which we covered in the last video. And that is basically this table, if you remember that. So yeah, when you roll damage from a weapon or spell, you count each die separately. So say you're casting a spell and it does 2d6 damage, right? You roll your 2d6, but then you don't do 11 damage. What you do is you read each die separately. So 6, and you look up on this table. A 6 is 2 damage, and then a 5 would be 1 damage. So you've done 3 damage to the enemy. So, and that just explains that here in this text. Damage done to heroes, as we said last time, is subtracted from their hit points. Damage done to anyone else is done to their hit dice. So here under damage rolls, I will just write read dice separately. Look up damage table. Okay, that is like the basics, the very basics of playing the game. And as it's a solo game, like this isn't the solo section. So don't worry, it's not just going to say, off you go, do what you want. There is a whole section of the rule book for solo gaming, pages 114 to page 131. So don't worry about that. And we're going to go over that in the following videos. Now there's one more rule that I wanted to cover before we go on to looking into the character classes, and that is defying death, because this is something that's really useful when you only have one character in Scarlet Heroes. And it's kind of like a system for fate points, that kind of thing, where you can spend something to get out of a tricky situation that would kill you. So basically what it says here is, sometimes a hero is left to face inexorable doom. Rather than succumb to the lethal poison of the centipede woman or fall prey to the psychic domination of the blood sorcerers of Tien Lung, a hero may defy death. A hero can defy death anytime they wish to avoid the consequences of a failed saving throw or escape a situation of otherwise certain catastrophe. They may also defy death to overcome some insufficiency of skill. So what it's for is, if, say, you're jumping across a pit and you make your skill check and you fail and you fall into the pit, and I think there's rules on fall damage here. Falling. Yeah, you suffer 1d6 damage die for each 10 feet fallen, with a dexterity saving throw to halve the damage if there's any means for the hero to slow their fall. So let's say you don't make your check, you fall in, and you work out your damage that you're going to get. You roll your damage dice, and it comes to more than the hit points that you've got left. What you can do is defy death, and to do it, we will write down defy death. To do it, you roll 1d4 damage die per level of your character. You read those those damage points that you're getting. And if they reduce you to 0 hit points, then you've failed to defy death, and you're left at 1 hit point, and then you apply whatever consequence happens to you. So in our example, it would be you take the full amount of damage from the fall damage and you get killed. In another situation, it could be like you're locked in a prison cell. You're not a thief, so you can't pick the lock. You've basically lost all hope of escape. You can't bend the bars because you failed your strength check or something. And so you could defy death, and if you succeed, someone comes and rescues you. If you fail, you just slowly wither away and starve to death in the cell. It's for situations like that as well. So you roll 1d4 damage die per level. I guess I'll write it down as well. If reduced to 0 hit points, you fail. If you are not reduced to 0 hit points and you survive, then that's it. You take that damage, but you are allowed to carry on living and playing the game. And the second part of defying death is once you've done that in one adventure, in the same adventure, you go up the dice chain, basically. So the next time you have to defy danger in the same adventure, you roll d6s instead of d4s, then d8s, then d10s, up to a maximum of d12s. And so not d20s, okay. This penalty keeps incrementing until they either succeed in their goal or admit defeat and try some other adventure. Only heroes can defy death. Other beings are shackled to the bitter limits of their destinies and must abide by the remorseless decrees of an uncaring fate. So in practice, when you first start playing, you will be level 1, and it means the first time you defy death, you will roll a 1d4 damage die. And a 1d4, right, can only do 1 damage to you, because 1 is 0 damage, 2 to 5 is 1 damage. So a d4 can only roll up to 4 points, right? So the first time you do it as a level 1 character, you probably won't die unless you add 1 hit point. So I suppose if you use it when you're like right at the end of a fight and you've got 1 hit point left and then the enemy hits you, then I guess you are going to take 1 hit point of damage from that defy death roll, and you will die. So it's not useful then. But if you get poisoned by a centipede woman and you fail your saving throw and it's instant death, then it would be useful. So that's something to bear in mind while you're playing. And it means that if you've got no party members there, which you probably won't have, to save your life and heal you, you can still get out of tricky situations by defying death. Okay, so before we go into the combat part of the video, let's have a look at the classes then, because there's only 4 classes. It's the classics: cleric, fighter, magic user, and thief. And the fact that you have that big table of suggestions for your background per class makes it really easy. Like if you wanted to be a wandering Ronin masterless samurai from that Japanese culture, you could easily do that, and you would use a fighter for it. If you wanted to be a barbarian like Conan, you would use a fighter as well, and you'd just base your traits on your background. So I think that's pretty good. Anyway, I rolled up these characters in the standard character creation way that we did last time, and I also rolled randomly for their backgrounds. And something actually I should show you that I missed out last time. So, you get 3 trait points. All characters, despite their whatever race they are or class they are, they get 3 trait points to spend. On this quick character generation table that we rolled on, you've got the backgrounds here, which give you an idea for trait points, you've also got a column that says innate qualities and a column that says relationships. So if we roll a D100, right, on innate qualities, these are supposed to give you ideas for traits. So what's that? 39. Iron determination. So that could be your trait, couldn't it? One of your traits. You get 1 point in iron determination. And then if you're doing something like climbing a mountain in a blizzard, you could add that trait point to a skill check that you have to do to reach a safe cave on the mountainside to rest in or something like that. And then relationships. 88. So secret agent for a merchant. That is someone you know. Okay. So you know this secret agent who works for a merchant. They might have information that you need, so they could be worked into the story of your first adventure. But you can also kind of add that as a trait with 1 point in it, because you could say that you gained knowledge from them in the past that helps you deal with some situation, maybe some social situation where you're trying to persuade someone of something, something like that. So this is really helpful when you're doing character creation, and I forgot that was there when we rolled on this table last time. So anyway, our cleric, I rolled up the name Muriel Imri. So she is a human Gadal female. Gadal is the Celtic kind of culture. I rolled up her stats, and remember, if you don't get a 16, you can change one of them to a 16. We got 2 16s, which is really good. I got her gear here, her traits and abilities. So her background was Inquisitor, basically like the Spanish Inquisition. So she's got 2 points in there. Her relationship was knows many thieves, and her innate quality, I've forgotten what they call it, was devout. Then I've also given her, because she's a human, she gets 3 points, I think, to spend as she wishes. So I made one called athletic, which is always useful to have. So anyway, back to the classes. Cleric. Let's see. Clerics can wear any armor, bear shields, and wield any weapon. They do not use them as skillfully as fighters or thieves do, however, and so their damage die is limited to 1d6. That is important to note. So thus, a cleric who swings a battle axe that normally rolls 1d8 damage would instead roll only 1d6. So you can use any weapon you want in this, instead of there being a kind of hard rule that certain classes just can't even pick up a weapon. But it's sort of meant, I think it's meant to be like if a thief grabs a two-handed sword off a table in a guard barracks and starts swinging it around, he's not going to be as able to do as much damage as he would if he was backstabbing someone with a dagger. So I think it's quite nice. And here in this little table here, it just mentions that again there. So maximum 1d6 damage. Clerics can cast magical spells, channeling the power of their god. These spells must be prepared daily through prayer and consecration. And once they are cast, the priest must wait till the next day to refresh his powers. And it works like cleric spells in other old school games. You don't have a spell book like wizards do, where you have a couple of spells written in it that you can prepare. You have access to all the level 1 spells that your god allows at the start of the game, and you just choose which ones you want at the start. And actually, we can see on Muriel Imri's character sheet here, you only know one spell as a cleric, as a level 1 cleric. It's in the rule book somewhere, but you can verify that if you want. Clerics can turn undead as well. We're going to go through the actual process of turning undead in the combat example, so I won't go over it now. But it's quite different actually to other old school games. And it just mentions here that a cleric must choose a particular religious faith, though the gods do not seem to especially care how their favoured behave once their gifts have been bestowed. The gods are quite distant in this world. They're not constantly intervening like they are in Dungeon Crawl Classics and things. And so the other things to note is that their initial hit points are always 6, modified by their constitution. So Muriel's are 8. They gain 3 hit points per level, which is just standard 3 per level. Their attack bonus starts as +1, and they gain half an attack bonus point per level. So on level 2, you won't get +2 attack bonus. You will still be on 1. Then on level 3, it will go to +2. And their fray die is 1d6. If you remember from last time, I think we went over the fray die, but in combat, it's an extra damage die that you roll, and it's not related to your attack roll. When you roll to hit, it always hits, and it's just basically bonus damage that represents you slashing around with your weapons and taking out weaker enemies. We'll go over it in the combat rules, in the combat examples, but theirs is 1d6. Okay, fighter. The fighter has a really good portrait here. Our fighter is Semyon Brassfist, a dwarf. So fighters can wear any armor, bear shields, and wield any weapon. Fighters are best at direct combat and can use any weapon to its full effect. So they don't have any limit to their damage dice that they can roll. If they've got a 2-handed weapon, it will be d10 damage, and they get the full roll. Fighters gain combat skill and hardiness more quickly than other classes. They gain +1 bonus to their attack bonus every time they level up, and gain more hit points than any other class. So their initial hit points are 8, modified by their constitution, and they gain +4 hit points per level, and +1 attack bonus per level, you can see there. Fighters have the best fray die. Fighters are particularly dangerous to lesser foes that dare get too close. Their large fray die makes it more likely that they will kill or incapacitate minor enemies that dare to face their blade. So their fray die is 1d8. So that, again, that means you'll be rolling an additional damage die of 1d8 every attack round, which is really great. Okay, so yeah, other than that, there's not anything that special about fighters. Our guy here, Semyon Brassfist, he's chosen. Well, he's got dwarven senses because he's a dwarf. That's like the elven senses trait. He's got minor because that is a profession trait that he gets as a dwarf as well. He's got leader of men, which I think I got from that table, and he's also got ex-mercenary, which I think I made up myself. I can't remember. I sort of mixed and matched from that table, and just my own imagination when I was making these guys. Then we've got the magic user, and we made Jing Pan, who is a male imperial human magic user. Let's see. Magic users cannot wear armor, cannot use shields, and have little skill with weapons. Armor interferes with their magical abilities, and they have little time to practice their swordplay. While they can use any weapon, their maximum damage die is 1d4. Thus, a wizard shooting a bow would only roll 1d4 for its damage die instead of the usual 1d8. So they can't do much physical damage at all. They can cast magical spells. They get a certain number of spells to choose from at the start. Let's see, they start play knowing a number of spells equal to 2 plus their intelligence modifier. Jing's intelligence modifier is +2, so he has got 4 spells. And we'll go over which ones he wants to use in the combat example. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the spells in right now. And the other thing is their fray die that they roll isn't them slashing around with a dagger or something. It's like magical energy, like, you know, kind of like just crazy magical energy flying off them as they wave their arms around casting spells. So like magic missiles or bolts or beams just zapping enemies that get too close to them. So their fray die is 1d4, but it affects any creature. Other people's fray dice can only be used against creatures of hit dice equal to or less than your character level. We'll go over this in the combat example. But wizards, well, magic users, their fray dice affect any creature, and I think they are long range as well, up to something like 60 feet. We'll check that when we go over combat. But so that's magic users. They get 4 hit points to start off with, modified by Constitution. They get 2 hit points per level. Their attack bonus is +0 to start off with, and they gain a third of an attack bonus point per level. So yeah, not a lot. And then thieves we went over when we made Shekad Brokenstone. So just as a really quick overview, armor allowed leather but no shields. Weapons allowed any weapons but limited to 1d8 damage. 4 hit points to begin with. They gain 2 hit points per level. Their attack bonus starts at +1, and they gain half an attack bonus point per level, and their fray die is 1d6. They also can do backstabbing. When they attack an unsuspecting or unwary target, they gain a +4 attack bonus to their attack roll, and they do triple damage with their weapon and fray die, which is great. You can imagine just a thief just taking out a whole kind of group of town guards from behind using that triple damage on all their damage dice. So yeah, that's it for classes. I mean, it's quite simple. You can do multi-classing in this. And there are rules for it here somewhere. I can't remember, but it works, in a similar way to other games. But yeah, that's pretty simple, I think.